are live. Welcome, mystery and thriller fans. I'm your on-air host and author, Sara DiVello, and I am so excited to welcome back again the legend himself, Mr. Walter Mosley, here to give us the inside scoop on his 17th Easy Rawlins book, Gray Dawn. Walter Mosley, welcome to Mystery and Thriller Mavens. Tell us about
Thanks.
this
It's great to
book.
be here. Yeah.
So, what's Easy up to in Gray Dawn? Give us the inside scoop.
Well, this book starts. The beginning of this book is the title, and when it says "A Gray Dawn," it's very kind of depressing for him. He's depressed, and it's odd because he lives on top of a mountain where there's like six other houses. The lady who owns the mountain has given him, like free rent or rent $1 for every century. So he has free rent for the next 100 years, and he's there. He has a business that's going really well. The mountain is protected by these 5 Sicilian security guards who are very serious about protecting what they protect. His daughter is in France studying French culture. She's 16. His son is at least says he's a fisherman. We'll see, but so nobody's there. He had a girlfriend, and she was what anybody would say. Well, you should never have a girlfriend like that. That's trouble. But that's the kind of girlfriend Easy needs. So he has her, but she murders somebody, and Easy figures it out, and he says, "Listen, I just can't be with you. You murdered somebody." She says, "I don't understand why. You would have killed the guy for the same reason." And he agrees with her, but he says, "But I'm me, and you're you." And so everything about his life is not working, especially the fact that he's no longer living in the Black community among the people that really made him a detective. He would be there, and he would and he'd tell somebody come to him and say, "Well, I'm in trouble. They say I committed this crime, but I didn't commit it. Can you prove that?" And Easy says, "Yeah, and I can get it to the right police too. What are you going to pay me?" He says, "Well, my wife can make you chicken and dumplings every weekend for the next 6 months." And he said, "That's good because, I eat it on Saturday. And then the next, there's enough left over for Sunday too." So that was a life that he loved. He wasn't wealthy. He could be in trouble. He was a little vulnerable, but at least he was doing what was important to him. Everything about his life made sense then. And so he decides somewhere in the beginning of this book to try to get back to what was before. But what was before, first novel, he's the first mystery, he's 28, and now he's 52, getting back. And life in the Black community has gotten harder, not easier, because there's so much anger and crime and that kind of stuff. But he doesn't care. That's where he wants to be, and that's where he's gonna be. And so the novel has like an upward thing. And so the truth is, if he doesn't get killed, he's going to be happy.
If he doesn't get killed, he's going to be happy. Exactly. I feel like that we should get that on a t-shirt for him.
Yeah.
That's his motto. Oh my gosh. Well, I know I have so many questions for you. People submitted questions in advance, and I already see people are streaming in to ask as well. So I want to jump right into them. But first, I just want to welcome everyone because we are broadcasting live to 7 different destinations across Facebook and YouTube, including, of course, the renowned Murder by the Book, our favorite woman-owned independent bookstore. So if you have a question for Walter, just get it going right in the comments, and I will get it right over to Mr. Mosley. First up from Charles Williams. He says, "Great book as always, Mr. Mosley." And so well said, Charles, because when it is a Walter Mosley book, it's going to be good. Randy is joining us from YouTube, said, "Hi, Sara, glad you're back." Randy, good to have you. Thank you. Your black cat is very on brand for heading into Halloween now. I like that. Oh, you have another kitty too. I love it. Robin is joining us from Facebook saying, "Hello, Sara and Walter from chilly Coeur d'Alene, Idaho." Welcome, Robin. Good to see you here. Murder by the Book. The girlfriend is in trouble. Just the kind of girlfriend that Easy needs. Exactly. Okay. So the question that is most on my mind is, Walter, this is your 17th Easy Rawlins book. How has Easy changed for you? And how has your writing process of him changed from book 1 to book 17?
Wow, that last question, I don't know if I can answer. Because I don't actually, I don't get physicals on my writing. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. I mean, I'm writing. I think it's the same thing. Your question, it makes me think. Well, maybe I changed a lot. Maybe I have. I don't know. The books have changed somewhat, but I've in some ways, in technical senses, I've become a better writer. I'm not sure if artistically I've become a better writer, but certainly in technical ways. The thing about Easy, the thing that's built into this series, is that he's aging at a pretty normal pace, and and Los Angeles is changing. So you start in Los Angeles in the first mystery, 1948, and now it's 1972. Completely different world. Everybody's different. His the assistant to his little detective agency, Niska Redmond, she comes up to him and says, I want to be a detective. This is in the last book. So I want to be a detective. I want to do that kind of work. And Easy thinks to himself, he says, I've never even imagined a woman being a detective. I've never met a woman being a detective. I don't know if a woman could be a detective. But because he's the kind of guy he is, and I think that comes through all of his history, he says, but I'll give you a chance. I'll give you some jobs. I'll give you some, lessons. And if you can become a detective, you will. And if not, you not. And I think that, dealing with, feminism at that time in which it's really, certainly there's a lot of age to feminism, but modern feminism really is late 60s, early 70s, where it became a household thing. It became among all women, whether they admitted it or not, it was something that drove them. They weren't working against it. And, you have these women, I mean, these incredible women. You have Mama Joe, you have Etta Mae, you have Mouse's girlfriend, the Viet Cong, you have, this is a place where women actually are shining. And that was a lot of fun, and people are all over. People are very successful. Jackson Blue is a millionaire. Mouse probably is too, but he's a criminal millionaire. It's another kind of millionaire. Fearless Jones, he's living his life, being happy. His friend Paris, Jackson Blue. I mean, all these people are there, and they're moving forward into a very open time for people where people are really learning, especially in a place like California, and I, so it was just, and I know like none of that has to do with the mystery. The mystery has to do, with a guy who comes in, he's a little deceptive in who he is. And he says Easy thinks he looks like a wild boar, but he's going to take this case. He's going to look for this guy's, Aunt Letitia James, but he knows the guy is lying. He doesn't care. He says that's my job, is to reveal lies. And so he's gonna be after that trying to find that woman. But by the time he comes to the end, he runs into a conspiracy that's so large in Southern California that when he tells his friend, the policeman Melvin Suggs, he says, I know who committed the crime. And he tells him who it is. He said, well, listen, leaving the state, it won't be good enough. You should get out of the country because there's no way in the world we can even talk to this guy, and you go, oh my God, this is, but this is the kind of world that we live in, and Easy's the kind of guy who will go up against anybody, even though he doesn't want to.
I realize I've been to LA a few times, but I don't know anything about LA in either 1948, where the series starts, or 1972. What is your research process like? Research?
Ooh. I know you research when you work. I don't. It's like I'm from California. I'm from LA. Okay. I'm very interested in history and historical things. I don't I don't study LA or New York or, as in order to write something. But I'm very interested in the past, and living in LA, the LA in by 1946 or so, I don't know what the population was, like 350,000. Now it's like 8 million. And the southern the area is like 17 million.
So it was so much smaller then.
100,000 people a year every year since 1945.
Wow, I did not know that.
It's grown. When I would ride with my father, we'd be, we used to go out to Santa Monica a lot. My mother's cousins lived in Santa Monica, and my father and I were driving out there some years later, and I remembered that when we used to drive there were strawberry fields, there was ponds, there was all these things, and I said, Dad, where are those strawberry fields? And he says, I remember them, Walter. I said, but I have no idea where they were,
Yeah.
And that's everything about LA. I think right now it's kind of stabilized for a while, which is not bad because, there are too many people here, but what are you going to do?
Walter, I have one more question that I am dying to get to, and then we're going to jump into some of the audience questions. But from the iconic first line of Devil in a Blue Dress, which is, I was surprised to see a white man walk into Joppy's bar, to the first line now of Gray Dawn, which is, the phone was ringing. Those evenly measured burps of jangled noise were a warning that my life was falling apart. That much I knew. And I just always think about the importance of a first line and how you can center a reader so deeply in a character, in a moment, in their worldview, in time, in the story. And I was wondering, what is the process of writing that these first lines for you?
And boy, I wish I could answer that question, with some kind of, some kind of impact, some kind of type of gravitas. Look, I wrote, I was surprised to see a white man, walk into Joppy's bar. I just wrote that, and I went, that's interesting. And then I didn't want to let that line go. So I said, it's not just that he's white. He had an off-white linen suit and shirt and white silk socks and tan shoes and a Panama hat. And I was like, yeah, well, and he starts thinking about being afraid of white people, but then he'd been in the war, so he'd seen so many white people die anyway. But this was just me working on the character, and writing is rewriting. So I wrote all that in the beginning, and then I went over it and rewrote it. I worked at it, made it better. And really, I'm thinking back when I wrote the telephone ringing part too. I don't even know if I knew who was calling. Because when you're writing, now I have to say that it struck me lately when I started thinking about reading, and I've been writing a little bit about reading. A writer writes a book, okay, and they put it all in, and the writer, we writers, we think we're so smart, we created that book, we did that thing, blah blah blah, right? But the truth is, it's all just black letters on a white page, or dark letters on a white page, and then you give it to somebody else and they read it and they know what the character looks like, what they talk like. They may know what it smells like on top of that mountain. They feel the wind. They know the house. They know the people. They hear the sound of the music. All of this stuff is made up by the reader. So the reader, in one sense, is just as creative as the writer is, because they're bringing in all of that and they're recreating it for themselves. And what they see and feel and think is different than what I saw and felt and thought when I was writing. I think that's true.
I like that idea of reading being a creative process, as creative as the writing. I never thought of it like that, Walter. I love that.
Yeah, I've been struggling with it lately because I think it has to be true. One of the things I would say is I was doing a reading years and years ago, and a guy came up to me and said, "Hey Mosley, you writing about that guy Mouse, right?" And Mouse, I said, "Yeah." He said he was living in that blue house on Denker, right? And I said, "Yeah, Denker Street, yeah, sure." And he says, "I was born in that house." Now, what's interesting is I made up the house, okay? But that's one fact. But the other fact is that guy was actually born in that house because that's what he created when he read the book. Something that was substantial in his mind and his memory and his life.
I mean, that is a weird brain mind merge. Like,
Uh-huh.
that's crazy. Oh my gosh.
Well, but and it opens up so much about your writing, my writing. You know what I'm saying? Like we're sharing this work with people in a deep sense. And this is why I tell writers when they're writing, don't rely only on other writers to criticize and to talk about your work. You know,
Mm,
because what you're writing, is on a much broader level than that.
mm.
It's everybody who reads it.
I love that. Lexi, welcome to the conversation, saying there's something so unique and strange about Los Angeles. A strange city indeed. Charles Williams says, I bought every book you've written. I can't wait for Galen next
Oh,
year. Thank you for
yeah.
being here, Charles. Robin says, I remember Disneyland when it was surrounded by orange groves. Later, when
Yeah.
LA was blankets and smog so thick you couldn't see the nearby mountains. Uh, wow. Charles wants to know, will you do a traditional Western in the future or blend science fiction to that genre? Great question.
Yeah, if I write a Western, I would like to write a traditional Western. As traditional as it is, you know, uh, so interesting. I was when I used to talk to my dad about, because he was born in Louisiana, but he moved consciously when he was 8 years old. He took himself and he jumped a train and he went to Fifth Ward, Houston, Texas.
When he was
And when I talked to my dad about Texas, about him being a Texan, he said, "Yeah, man, we're cowboys. We're all cowboys," and it's true that black men were a big part of the cowboy group, and it would be fun to to write about that. I working with my friend, another wonderful mystery writer, Gary Phillips, trying to do a Western TV series about because the Oklahoma Territory was all people of color before it became a state. It was all people of color, and it was its own society. And the radical Republicans that came after Lincoln wanted to maintain that, but when their power broke, so did that place, Oklahoma. So so yes, I would like to write something traditional, but not exactly traditional, because it's not traditional in as much as most people haven't seen it. They haven't seen the what I would write about.
I would love to see a black cowboy book by Walter Mosley, because I was not I don't know that much about cowboys in general. And I was unfamiliar with the black history part of the cowboy culture, and I would love to learn more about that. That would be a really cool book. Robin is still thinking about this moment that you had with the reader who claims that he had been born in this house that you had imagined.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is just so crazy. Randy saying he lived in LA briefly in the mid 1980s. He loved it. Oh wow, the LA must have been really interesting in the 80s. You guys, I want to remind you that the book just came out, and Walter is here to take our pressing questions and give us the inside scoop. But you can order the book from our favorite woman-owned independent bookstore. That is, of course, Murder by the Book in Houston, Texas. Speaking of cowboy culture, and whether you're watching with us on Facebook or YouTube, here is that link so that you can get your mitts on Gray Dawn, the 17th book in Walter's renowned Easy Rawlins series. And I want to remind you that the National Book Foundation deemed Walter a master of craft and narrative. And I think we can all agree that is most certainly true. While you are ordering, let's take a few more questions. Lexi saying, reading as a creative process. I'll be thinking about that all week. Lexi, I'm thinking about it too, because I hadn't thought of it like that. But you're so right, because Walter, you're imagining this world and conveying it down to as you said, in black ink on white pages. And then we as readers are imagining that world as well.
Yeah, we create it. A whole three-dimensional world and characters who we know and identify with and have feelings toward. It's really kind of amazing.
It really is. Not only this is your 17th Easy Rawlins, you have also written nonfiction as well as fiction, as well as science fiction, as well as for TV. You truly, you even taught a master class on erotica. There's nothing you can't do, Walter. Is there, what brings you the most joy? What is most interesting to you? Is it a genre? Is it a character? Is it a medium, whether it's television or books? What is sort of really gets your neurons firing?
Well, I think that first, if anybody asks me, seriously, and I hear seriously what they're asking, and I say, they say, well, what do you do? I said, well, I'm a novelist. That's what I say, because I write novels. I write short stories and I write other things, but I write novels, and that's what I find most interesting. That's what I enjoy the most. If I'm lucky, I write every morning, and if I'm lucky, I'm writing on fiction every morning. Sometimes lately, I've been working on these screenplays. But you have to do other things sometimes, and I don't hate it. I enjoy that too, but it's just not as much as writing fiction. But as far as what I'm writing, it depends on what I'm trying to say. Like if I'm trying to say something about something that's kind of existentialist, or maybe beyond the limits that have been placed on me and I place on myself, then I might be writing science fiction. If I'm writing about people's history in America, I'm more likely will write a mystery or some other kind of popular kind of thing, so that people can understand that history even if they're not a part of it. So it depends on what I'm writing. If I want to explain something like writing, I'll write a book about writing,
Because you have written 6 nonfiction books, but you still consider yourself first and foremost a novelist. That's what has your heart.
Well, 6 nonfiction books, but I've published 62 books. So most of those were fiction,
God, Walter.
Yeah.
Robin needs to know, what is something on your bucket list? Ooh, yeah, because you've done so many things. A Penn Lifetime Achievement Award winner, NAACP, Grammys. So many awards. I can't even keep up. What is there left to do for you, Walter? What is on your bucket list?
Like right now, I'm sure, within the next 3 months, something, really, important will come up, and I say, well, I need to do that. I have to write about that. I have to say that. I have to do that. But, as a rule, I'm just happy, being able to write every morning. You can get up, you can sit down, you can write, you can, think, you can, figure out stuff. I had written a friend and I had written a pitch document for a series, a Fearless Jones series, updated, modern, Fearless Jones today, which I thought I could do because it has so many comedic parts to it. And I'm trying to write, like, I had written a story. He and I together, my friend Jerome and I, had written a story, and the people came back. It was really wonderful. They said, well, we want to take it out, but this is too complex. There's too many things going on. There's too many moving parts. Can't you simplify? Can't you take out all these things? And I worked so hard to get all those things in there. This morning, I had to take all those things out
Oh,
and come back in and say, okay, now I'm going to tell this story. Let's see what that's like. And that's fun, because I mean, it doesn't matter. And I'm just, to be able to, condense something or to expand it or just to kind of answer a problem. I mean, it's really fun. It's good for other things that I might do, maybe
Walter,
this will work too.
have you worked with the same editor for all 17 Easy Rawlins books?
Oh my God, no,
Okay.
really, at least like 5 editors at least, Wow. I pay less attention to editors than many writers do, Also, I mean, people talk to me about the progression of my writing. They'll say, so now, because you've been writing for a long time, and so your writing has gotten better and better and better. So now, what do you think now about all the books that you wrote before? Which is funny. That's a writer's question. A writer will ask you that. A writer will say, well, you got better and better and better because they can see kind of technically how you've done more and more, and how many people, not everybody, many people, their language and their use of language improves. And I always say to everybody, I said, well, every book that I've written since Devil in a Blue Dress is a little bit better technically. But I've never written a book better than Devil in a Blue Dress. Because, and that's when you start talking about people outside of writing. A lot of people read Devil, and Devil is just, it's a jazz novel. There's an energy to it because it's the first time this character is discovering being a detective. I gave myself a lot of time to develop that. His friend's mouse, I guess Mama Jo wasn't in that one, but she'd been in the previous one, the one that didn't get published till much later. When I don't look, I look at it the way, people look at classical music, they could be called Devil in a Blue Dress, or Red Death, a White Butterfly, or they could be opus number 1, opus number 2, opus number 3. You know what I'm saying? That's because, I'm everything is connected, that I'm writing. Even the science fiction and the erotica and the, all that other stuff that I've written,
Margaret is joining the conversation saying, I pay less attention to editors. I'm thinking about that comment too, Margaret. We need to know more about that, Walter. Are you saying that when your editor sends you some suggestions, you send a polite no thank you back? I think we need more information about that.
Well, there's a lot of no thank yous, I think. And also, nowadays, I'm not trying to talk about the quality of editors, because most of them are very smart and they know a lot about literature, but the job has changed.
Yes.
People, I have editors that are talking to me about, well, could you put some more action in this? And I go, and to begin with, there's action, and not in that book, but when I'm writing now, and I said, can you put some more action in this? And I'm saying, well, it's not an action book. I said, but people are buying, the action, so, Sean Cosby, who I love, and I think is a wonderful writer. There is a lot of action in that. And so I said, well, now we need you to be more like that. And I said, I love Sean. I love his work. He's a great guy. I said, but I'm not writing those books.
Exactly.
I have a book that I've written like that, and that's probably coming out in the next year. But so if you're asking me something, because my idea of an editor is this: an editor reads your book, figures out what you're trying to say, what you're trying to do, what the characters mean, and then when you fail yourself and you're not doing that, they say, well, this part here where you wrote about this character, doesn't seem to be what's on your mind in this book. It seems like you've backed away from it. There are questions here that this character has to answer for themselves, right? And if they're a good editor, which I mean they're all good, but most of them, they're not asking you that. They're asking you how you know, how can we make more money on your book? Because I would like to keep my job and I would like to keep publishing you, you know.
Right.
And I understand that and I appreciate it. But at the same time, you know, that's not, in my idea, that's not the job.
I totally agree. And one thing that I noticed that is a burr under my saddle, to go back to the cowboy metaphor, is that I noticed that there's a lot of time and energy spent on trying to replicate this one book that was successful X number of years ago. And so they're like, well, that book worked for that person at that particular time. So now we want more of that, you know, and whether it is, you know, some variation of Girl on the Train or, you know, Gone Girl or whatever, you know, insert whatever successful book here. And it's just so mind-boggling to me, because just because it is that one book worked for that one author at that particular point in time, for that culturally, politically, whatever was going on in the world, that trying to replicate that and rubber stamp that is never going to be exactly what it is. So instead of trying to be satisfied with some fraction of their success, why don't we just write a great book and see what the next great successful book will be? And that's, I think, what's really frustrating to me.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think it's very true that, you know, that you know, the idea becomes, you know, that and I don't think anybody's thinking this really, but what happens is, well, I want you to write this book. What I'm imagining is this book over here, and you've written this book over here.
Yes.
And I'm looking at him saying, well, why'd you buy that book? I mean, come on now.
Right.
You know?
Exactly. Margaret saying, yeah, the eye on the market in an editor can be putting the cart before the horse. Exactly. Right. Now we're just saying fully in Cowboy Lane. I love it. Leslie's
joining us. The Cowboys.
Yeehaw. Leslie is joining us from Canada saying, hello, good for you. Editors need to let the author create the story and edit and stop pandering to what they think the market wants.
Yeah.
Well said. Charles saying the copy and paste mentality. That's bananas. Yes, the copy and paste mentality. Well said, Charles. Margaret saying replicating instead of finding unspoken to segments of readers loses us great books. Exactly. Well, speaking of great books, we have Mr. Mosley's Grey Dawn for sale for you tonight at our fabulous partner in crime, that is Murder by the Book. And you can get your mitts on the world of Easy, Rawlins, NLA, and his new female detective, Letitia. So is it Letitia or Lutetia?
Oh, no, Niska is the detective.
Sorry,
Niska. Yeah, Letitia's, she's ends up being a woman out of Easy's past.
Sorry, I got the names mixed up.
No, that's quite all right.
I was copying and pasting the order link. Whether you're watching with us on Facebook or YouTube, here is that link so that you can click and get your mitts on the world of Easy. And please notice that I have perfectly coordinated that color of that mauve Grey Dawn. You guys, that is a wrap for us. Time flies when we're having fun. We're actually a few minutes over, but when you're dealing with someone like Mr. Mosley, we could talk all night. Again, here's that link to order Murder by the Book. Get your mitts on Mr. Mosley's latest, and I hope your week is off to a killer start. Walter Mosley, thank you so much for joining us to give us the inside scoop on
Thank you. This is great. Thanks a lot. Hope to talk to you soon.
Okay, sounds good, everybody. Hope your Monday is off to a killer start, and I will see you next week. Take very good care until then.
Bye.
Bye.